Record. Okay. All right. Just so, and if you need to go back and listen and look at something, you'll be able to do that as well. So let me just show you. On here, you see, these are your navigation tools to get around in the course. This is our Canvas homepage. It's what pops up when you're on the computer, is the first thing you see. How many of you have the Canvas app on your phone? Ah, okay, it is a handy tool. I wouldn't do my homework there, but there's a lot of other things it's real nice for. And what you will find is on the app, this page does not pop up. You have to go to pages to find it, and it's the front page or the home page there, and you can see it. But what you have on here is my contact information with my office hours. You will see a video that explains how to set up your notifications in Canvas, how to do your settings and make sure that everything in there is set up the way you want it to be set up. You'll use this little icon that if you've loaded a picture, it's going to be your picture there. If not, it may have some other little graphic to go in. And this video kind of explains how you might do those settings. So you can decide what you want to be notified about. I put my phone number in there as part of my contact information. And so I have it set if an announcement comes through, it pushes a message to my phone. So I will get notified right away if an instructor sends me something. If tests get graded, you can set it up to be notified. If a due date changes, you can set it. You get to decide which things you want to be notified about. And that way you don't have to worry about, oh, I forgot to go look in Canvas to see what's going on. If it's something that's important that you need to be reminded about, it'll automatically come to you that way. This is the link for Zoom meetings for tutoring sessions. And so here's why I want to point this out. Let's say you are working. We have class Tuesday, Thursday. Let's say you're working on Friday, maybe over the weekend or on Monday, and you're having trouble with something. It's not making sense. And you would like to get some help. If you send me a message and you say, you know, Ms. Bedford, I'm just not getting this. Is there some way that you could tutor me? We're going to schedule a time together that's convenient. And I do not mind meeting with you in the evenings or on weekends if that's best for your schedule. I won't do it 2 o'clock in the morning, but most other times I can be pretty flexible about. And you would come to this link and we would meet on Zoom. And what I can do is pull up your homework where we see your exact problem. We talk about it. We work on it together. It may be something that takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If you need an hour's worth of tutoring, I'm willing to do that. So be aware that's if you do want some tutoring, that's where we would set it up. While we're talking about tutoring, let me just mention this as well. Has anybody ever used tutor.com? The school pays for this as a service for you. So there's the other thing. Let's say you want that 2 o'clock in the morning tutoring. I'm not available, but tutor.com is. And if you click there, now I don't know who it would be because it's an outside tutoring service, but I have had some students use this in the past and have found that it was helpful. So that's another option if you decide, I can't coordinate with Ms. Bedford's schedule, or, you know, it's just better for me if I do this when I get off work at 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever. Try using tutor.com for some help if you need it as well. And then what you're going to see, these are not active yet because I don't yet have them recorded, but I will record our class sessions and I will have those listed here where for this purpose. Let's say you wind up being absent on Thursday. You got a doctor's appointment you scheduled a long time ago, can't be changed, you just can't be here. You would be able to come and click on this and see exactly what we did in class because I'm going to record it. So that way you'll be able to catch up if you've been absent. If you find that the pace seems a little fast, or maybe you just like to hear things more than once, you can always go back and review what we've done in class. So I found by putting that on there, it gives you more tools so that you can figure out what you need to be successful. So that's what's on the homepage. So far, we good? All right, awesome. One thing that is different this semester is you're gonna find before you can do anything else, welcome, come on in. We're just kind of going through some things in the course. In each class, you have to do this student success agreement. How many of you have already done this for at least one class? Yeah, this is what we're using to be a record of attendance. We have to have something that verifies you've attended when we submit things to the state. It's pretty painless, right? You just have to click on it, you read what it says, you click a button that says I agree, and at that point, you're able to get into everything else in the course. It just keeps you out of everything until you agree on that. If you go to modules, what you will see is obviously the student success agreement, and it has been set up where you can't get into any of this other stuff until you accept that. The very next thing, like if you do that and you click the button next, it's going to take you to inclusive access. And I'm going to try to make sure we all get this taken care of today. This is where we're going to set up our homework. Has anybody worked in my math lab before? Okay, a few people. If you haven't, we actually use my stat lab, which is just the statistics version of my math lab. It's through Pearson, and it is online homework that gives you a lot of extra tools and support. I mean, like in high school, did you do some kind of online homework for math, or were you using a textbook? Textbook. And the thing about the textbook is when you work the problem, you may be able to see the answer in the back of the book on some of the problems, usually not all. But if you get it wrong, you don't know what you did wrong. With my math lab or my stat lab, it has some help features in there that will begin, if you click on view an example, it's going to show you a problem that's like it, except the numbers are different, and you can kind of see step by step, oh, that's what I needed to do. If you're really not even sure how to start, there's a button called Help Me Solve This, and it will take that very problem and coach you through it. Basically say, well, the first thing you need to do is blank. And then it'll say, what do you get when you do that step? And you fill that in, and then it'll tell you the next step. So there's a lot of features there that I personally think are really nice. Not to mention the fact that if I get a problem wrong, it's going to give me multiple attempts. If I get it wrong too many times, it counts it wrong, but then it gives me a button that says similar exercise, and it'll give me a brand new problem, different numbers, and if I get it right, I still get full credit. So it gives you lots of opportunity to practice and learn. And we'll be working on that throughout the semester. This Start Here module has the information you need. I do want to cover just a couple of things in the syllabus so that we kind of hit the high points. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you. You can go back and look at that. But I figure probably one of the things you're most interested in is how are you going to calculate my grade? So let's look at that real quickly. And here's what we see. 20% of your grade will come from a homework quiz category. So I'm going to put those together. We'll probably have more homework assignments than we will quizzes, but those combined will be worth 20% of your grade. Now we'll take 4 exams in this course. Typically we cover 2 chapters in our book at a time on an exam. Those exams are worth 60% of your overall grade. So most of your grade is going to come from testing, because the other 20% comes from your final exam, which is comprehensive. And you can't be exempt from it. You have to take the final exam. Now, don't get panicked, because part of what we'll work on in this course is some test taking strategies. I'm going to give you reviews. We're going to be working together to try to get you to a place where you're going to feel hopefully comfortable about testing. You still have to take the test. You still have to do the work. But if you feel like you've had some test anxiety, we're going to try to do some things to make that better, and just communicate with you, because we also have other resources on campus to help with things like that. I do want to mention this. As far as homework, the way it's set up in my math or my stat lab, there's a due date. If something happens and you don't get it completed by the due date, you do get to work on it after the due date for a penalty. It's gonna take off some points for what you do after the due date. But you can still work on it. Now, quizzes are firm deadlines. If you don't take a quiz by the day that it's due, you're gonna get a 0 on it. In tests, there are no late tests and no makeup tests. So if I say we're having our first test on September 30th, if you are not here on September 30th, you will have a 0 on it. Now, before you get too panicked, I'm going to show you in a second. I've got planning calendars that will let you know in advance when the tests are planned. We sometimes have to tweak a little bit if something comes up and we either needed more time on something, or, you know, we find out we've got some big issue where a lot of people are going to be out. But it gives you a guideline of knowing when to expect the test. And so if you see there's a problem, maybe you're on rodeo team, you're not going to be here that day because y'all got something going on, you communicate with me in advance. And if it's something that you're the only one that's affected, I'll work with you on giving you a chance to test early. You might come to my office and do it a day ahead of time, or go to the testing center and do it a day early. You just can't test late. So don't think that it's okay to be gone with something related to TTCC, come back the next class and say, well, yeah, I wasn't here because I was doing such and such. I'm ready for my makeup test. There are no makeup tests. So as a safety net, because I realize sometimes you may wake up sick on a test day, and there's not anything you can do about that. So what's going to happen is you will get to replace your lowest test grade with your final exam grade at the end of the semester. That's your safety net. If something happens one time and you get a 0 on a test, it doesn't sink you for the course. You could still make an A in the course because you can replace that one with your final exam. What you can't do is have it happen twice in a semester. Okay. So any questions on that so far? All right. If we were to look at this section down here, as far as classroom policies, I really encourage you, try to be present each time. There's something about being here in person, getting the instruction that you will do much better than if your attendance isn't very good. It's just a lot harder to stay on task if you're not here. In the beginning, in fact, what we're going to do today, you're going to think, really, this is a math class? Because it's very vocabulary intensive for the first part of this. That's really all we're going to be doing in chapter 1. But by the time we start chapter 2, we will start doing things that look more like math, which means you're going to need a calculator. At a minimum, you have to have a scientific calculator. How many of you already have a calculator? You're going to be fine. Good to go. You cannot use a calculator on your phone. You've got to have an actual calculator. If you don't have one and you need one, let me give you a piece of advice that might be helpful. As soon as this class ends, I would go over to the library, the LRC, and tell them you would like to check out a calculator for the semester. They have some calculators that they'll just take a photo of your ID and they will let you check it out like you would a book, but keep it for the whole semester. If they haven't given them all out yet, they even have some graphing calculators. So if you're familiar with the TI-84 and you say, I like that calculator because I know how to use it, if they aren't all gone yet, you may be able to get one. They also have just regular scientific calculators, which are fine for this course, but I will tell you, part of what we will do has some shortcut buttons in the TI-84 that you probably would really like to have access to. So if it's possible to get one of those and you know a little bit about how to use them, I'm probably going to show you buttons you've never used before, but as long as you aren't overwhelmed by all that a TI-84 will do, you're probably going to want to have one of those. So that's the calculator that you will need. One last thing, let's have a quick conversation about cheating, dishonesty, scholastic dishonesty policy. As far as helping each other in class with homework and, saying, okay, I don't get what this question's saying. What do you do on this? That is exactly what you need to be doing as a good student. The more that you can discuss and help each other, because you are trying to learn, then you are being a good student. What's not good is either utilizing your neighbor or unauthorized notes on a quiz or a test when you're not supposed to have any. Or let's talk about this real quickly. I know a lot of you are very familiar with those apps you can have on your phone that you take a picture of a problem and it gives you an answer. Okay, I usually have students reluctant to acknowledge, yes, I know about that, but I know you know about that and I know about that. Here's problem number 1 for you in statistics. Almost everything we do is a word problem. Those apps don't work very well on statistics questions. But even if it did, here's problem number 2. If you're using that with the goal of just getting the answer and not learning how to do the problem, that is cheating. You're cheating yourself and you are not going to do well on the test. If you overuse those buttons in my math lab for view an example or help me solve this, or you're using them only for the purpose of, I just need to get the answer on here, I don't care if I learn how to do it, you're not going to do well on the test. So you need to make sure, if you have either been relying on resources like that when you do your homework, that once you get the answer, you need to click on similar exercise and try it one more time without using any helps to see if you really understand it. And if you do that, then you should do okay on the test. I run into more students who end up having a really good homework grade because they'll do whatever it takes to get the homework completed with a good grade, and then they can't pass a test, and it catches up with you in the end. So just a word of caution on that. Okay, anything else? Awesome. Let's talk about, oh dear, I need to remove that. That My Lab and Mastering button should not be on there, so let me fix that. You can find your grades on here. Lockdown browser, we probably will not be using. If there is a need that comes up, that's kind of like if when COVID hit and everything had to go remote. In the event something like that were to happen, we might use lockdown browser, but let's pray that doesn't occur this semester. Okay, so that kind of talks us through the key things related to the course. We're at a point now that we probably should be ready for attendance. I know I've done a lot of talking. So let me just briefly introduce myself. And then as we go through the roster taking attendance, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. So here's what I will tell you about me. My name is Jan Bedford. This is my 15th year of teaching full-time at TVCC. Before that, I taught at Crandall High School. I've been married 40 years. We just took an anniversary trip this past summer, which was really nice. We have 10 grandchildren. Number 11 is on the way. So I'm kind of busy with grandkids. And yes, Christmas has me a bit nervous. That sounded really expensive now. But I have to tell you, as far as if I had a dream job, this is it. I love to teach. I really believe God's called me to teach. I teach Sunday school at my church as well. So I'm excited about this semester and the opportunity to get to know you guys. So here's what I want you to do is I call your name. If you will just tell me, in addition to your name, tell me where you're from, because I know we're from a lot of different places. Most of you indicated this is your first semester here. So why don't we do this? Your name, where you're from, and then tell us either if you're involved in an activity here at TVCC, or if you already know what you plan to major in, if you'd rather share that instead. Just tell us a little bit, something that we can kind of connect with your name and get to know each other. Okay. Okay. Is it Imani? Did I say that right? Say it again. Kaya Bernie? Okay, so go ahead and introduce yourself to us. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, so you're from Brownwood, you're not in any activity. How did you end up at TVCC? I'm curious. Do you know anybody here? No. No, okay. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And Warno. Okay, tell us a little bit about you. Okay, Warno from Palestine. So Lydia.
I'm from Bolivia. I'm from maybe, but I'm originally from Colorado. Out here, not in any activities, but I want to get my BSN license. I'm going to start here to for the transfer. Yeah, I got this.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Jennifer. Here. Hi, Jennifer, from Palestine. We're going to get this program. All right, very good. Is it Monet? Did I say it right? Okay. In your what? Ah, very good. Okay, Jada. Here you are. Diana from the cheer team. All right, I understand we have about 100 cheerleaders now. So does it get very competitive for y'all to be able to be the ones who get to go once? Okay. Lily. Ah, there you go. Nursing, okay. Destiny. Here. Okay, this is Destiny Dell.
Yeah,
That's you. Okay.
I'm from Oklahoma. I'm a cheerleader and I plan on majoring in nursing.
All right. James Fitzgerald.
I'm from Galva and I plan on working towards becoming a physical therapist assistant.
Very good, very good. And by the way, I forgot to mention, if you prefer to be called something other than the name that I call out, let me know. Leah?
That's me.
Yay.
I'm Leah. I'm from Kent. And I'm going for my BSN. And I also have a baby,
How old?
18 months. Well, not really baby, but
Well, yeah, if you're just beginning the really hard part, where you're chasing them everywhere and they just know the word no. So, yeah. Arwen. Hi, Arwen.
Hi, I'm Arwen. I'm from Mont Belvieu, Texas, and I'm a cadet, and I'm working to be a psychologist.
Very good. Miles.
I'm from Washington. I'm on the cheer team and my major is nursing.
Very good. All right, Celeste. Hi, Celeste.
Hi, I'm Celeste. I'm from Athens and I'm
Majoring in nursing. We usually get a lot of nursing students in this course. Hi.
Hello, hi, I'm Kai. I'm from South Carolina. I have all the children and my major is nursing.
All right. Beta.
I'm Dana. I'm from Canada and I'm me.
All right. Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin and I'm also majoring in nursing.
Okay. Like I said, we usually get a lot of nursing majors. Is it ASA or ASA? ASA. Okay.
My name is Alza. I'm from Jersey. My major is kinesiology and I'm treating.
Very good. All right, Verlene.
I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I'm doing work study with the volleyball team. So, and I'm majoring in nursing.
All right. Riley.
I go by Maddie. It's something I've done.
Hey, Maddie.
My life, and I'm also majoring in nursing, and I'm from Athens.
Okay. And Destiny. Yes.
Destiny, I'm from Hoffman and I'm majoring in nursing.
Very good. Okay. Is there anybody whose name I did not call? Okay. All right. Let me pass this out. And while we're doing this, I will just mention, if you haven't yet done it and you have the Canvas app, go ahead and do that student success agreement to unlock everything. If you don't have the app, and you want to wait, we're gonna have an opportunity to go over to the computers, those of you who need one. And, we'll take care of that then. So, let's do, okay. So hopefully, as we get a little further into this, the handouts, I'm thinking we'll get, to where they won't just be the full slide that I'm gonna show, but for right now, because of all the vocabulary, I tried reworking this and it just meant there was gonna be so much writing for you guys that I decided it was gonna be easier or better for you to give you the full slide. But then you've got room that you can make some notes to decide if we talk about something and you want to add the information. So let's start looking at what is statistics, okay? We want to find out why statistics is important. Have you ever wondered why, as a nurse, you might be required to know something about statistics? Just curious. Hopefully by the time we go through this, you're going to begin to see a lot of examples as to, oh, okay, I see where this might be used in the medical field. And what fields of study use statistics? So let's just look at a few here. And I think we're going to pretty well hit everybody who just gave me some idea of what you plan to study. I know we have some people interested in business. So economics, engineering, marketing, computer science, all of those fields need to have some general knowledge of statistics. The physical sciences, astronomy, chemistry, physics, we'll use it. Health and medicine, we've already discussed. We get a lot of nursing majors because there's a lot of application there. Even in the environment, ag, sometimes we'll have some ag majors that are in here, and government. One of our former instructors, she used to be our division chair, came to us after spending years working for the census department. She did a lot of gathering statistics about the United States because decisions are made based on the information they collect. So when we talk about what is collecting or what is statistics, it involves collecting data. I mean, that makes sense, right? You've got to have some information to use in order to do anything with it. Then you're going to have to organize that data in some way. If we get all the information, but we don't find a way to group it together in some usable format, it doesn't do us much good. And the reason we group it is so we can analyze it. Aren't we going to need to find similarities and differences in order to understand what the data is actually telling us, so that we can interpret the data? Okay, now let me give you an example of where you're going to see and hear this over and over for the next few months. What happens in this country in November? We have a presidential election that's taking place. If you're on social media, if you ever watch TV, if you have the radio on, are you likely to hear something about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris related to polls? Absolutely. That every day there's going to be some new poll that comes out. So what that means is somebody's collected data. They've either made phone calls, they've either sent out, do you get these text messages on your phone asking you to respond, you know, voting for me or voting for the other guy, whatever. They're collecting data somewhere so that somebody can organize it, analyze it, and interpret it. That's what this poll data is all about, because they're gonna tell you who's leading in the polls, who they think is gonna win in November. They're gonna do more polling, and they're maybe gonna have a different, idea when they do it a week later. Maybe people's minds have changed. Something has come out of the news. So that is the purpose of statistics, is to give us information based on data that's been collected. Okay, and that's what all data is observations that have been collected. Things like measurements, genders, surveys, responses, those are all forms of data, okay? So let's look at some examples. People who eat 3 daily servings of whole grains have been shown to reduce their risk of stroke by 37%. That sounds like something you might see on a Quaker Oats box. All right. That is data that somebody collected to see if we, and we're going to talk about how would you be able to come up with this information? What did you do with the data to see that? Here's another one. 70% of the 1,500 US spinal cord injuries to minors result from vehicle accidents, and 68% for not wearing seatbelts. Okay, so all of those are examples of data. Now, this is kind of important. This is some of our vocabulary here. We have 2 main branches of statistics. The first is descriptive statistics. The next is inferential statistics. Okay, and these should be on your PowerPoint sheet, but again, you can add more information as we talk about things. If you see something that you think, oh, I better write that down. So descriptive statistics includes all the things we've just been talking about. Collecting. When you collect the data, you organize it, you summarize it or analyze it, and you picture it. All right. That means you probably create a graphic, because how many of you, if you're trying to do some research on something and you want to know maybe the percent of people that do such and such, do you read through the whole document to find it, or do you look for that little graph that's maybe got the pie chart? That pie chart's very helpful, right? So it's very helpful in descriptive statistics to present things in a visual way so the reader can kind of get the main idea easily. But here's what happens with inferential statistics. You're going to make an inference. Now, I keep using that word. What does it mean to infer something or make an inference?
An educated.
Yeah, it's kind of like an educated guess. In other words, after you've looked at the data, you're going to say, this is what the data indicates. All right. That's what we see from the data. Hypothesis testing. This is one of my favorite things we do in statistics. We don't do it until the very end of the course, but how many of you are familiar with the word hypothesis? What did you use the word hypothesis in? What kind of class? Science class, because you would have a hypothesis, which is what you think would happen, and then you would do what? Would you do an experiment to test it? Yeah, that's typically what we do in science. Really, we do the same thing in statistics. We're going to have a hypothesis, and then we're going to learn the tests that we use to see if that hypothesis could possibly be true or not. Okay. We'll determine relationships. Sometimes we look at the data because maybe we want to see if there's a cause and effect thing going on. And so that's where we may be looking at the data to see, you know, well, if you're eating oatmeal, does that actually cause you to be less likely to have a stroke? Is there that kind of relationship there? And then making predictions. And that's what we were talking about with, say, the polling data. You're using what information you're getting to make a prediction about something that hasn't happened yet that you think will happen. All right, so look at this descriptive statistics. Decide which part of the study represents the descriptive branch of statistics and what conclusions might you draw using inferential statistics. So this gives you the idea. We're going to use both branches. They're going to fit together. So it says a large sample of men aged 48 was studied for 18 years. For unmarried men, approximately 70% were alive at age 65. For married men, 90% were alive at age 65. Okay. What do you think would be the descriptive part of statistics that we see here? Say again? Okay, so a lot of what we see in here in the reading is giving us description. And remember, we said that ultimately we kind of want to draw a picture. Look at the graphic here. So if we're talking about descriptive statistics, somebody took a survey or they collected some data. And what did the data show? What's just the data itself?
Live longer than men.
Okay, so the data shows if the men were married, 90% were alive at 65. Unmarried men, they're only 70% alive at the age of 65. Okay, now that's just saying this is what the data showed. That's the descriptive part. But you kind of led into, what do you think the inferential part is? Would this lead you to assume something from this data? Looks like married men are gonna live longer than unmarried men, right? Now, there could be some reasons for it. One might be they're happier. What's another reason?
For being taken care of by someone else.
Maybe they're being better taken care of because, you know, if you're married, your wife probably cooks and, you know, if you're not, you might be eating junk all the time. And so you have more likelihood of getting disease, being overweight, all kinds of things. That's the inferential part, okay? You're just looking at this and seeing, well, what does it appear would be the result? Now, when you gather data, you've got to have something to study. So we say that the individuals are the people or the objects that you're including in the study. And then the variables are the characteristics of the individual. It can be a person or an object. And the variables are going to be measured and observed. All right. You see what I'm talking about? Lots of vocabulary here. That's the part you'll need to practice. So let's look at two different types of variables. All right. The first is called quantitative. What does that sound like? Quantity. And if there's a quantity, does that mean it's something you can measure? Exactly. The other one is qualitative. What does that sound like? Okay, there's some kind of quality involved. In other words, it's not something you measure, it's something you describe, right? So let's look at this. If it's quantitative, it has to involve a value or numerical measurement. But if it's qualitative, it's probably something you just group or put in categories. Most of the time, notice it says not always, it's non-numeric. Just because I see a number doesn't automatically mean it's quantitative. But if I don't see a number, it can't be quantitative. There has to be a number to be quantitative. Does that make sense? In fact, can you think of a time that you might have numbers involved, but the numbers don't really have meaning? They're just there to help identify something. Do we have any, did I hear somebody say they were on the volleyball team? I'm gonna. Okay, so yes, you're doing the work stage with the volleyball team. So tell me something, do the volleyball players have numbers on their jerseys? They do, don't they? Do those numbers have a special meaning? Like if your name is Lola, you have to have number 4? No, they just are assigned a number, but the number itself doesn't have any, it might have meaning to them, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't get a number specifically because of some particular reason. That means it's not quantitative, it's qualitative. If I get a roster and it's got all the numbers of the players, I've got numbers, but those numbers don't specifically have meaning. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's just one example. So let's look at quantitative. If we took a list of everybody's weight, that'd be awful, but we could make a list of that. That would be quantitative data. Height, age, that would also be awful. Qualitative, though, would be things like collecting data on gender or origin, maybe what country were you born in. All right. So let's see if you can tell me out of this list, which one would be a qualitative variable. We've got age, mass, religious preference, and batting average. So what I want you to do is not say it out loud yet. Take a second to think about it. And then I'm gonna ask you to say A, B, C, or D in a minute, and we'll see as a class, we pretty well pick the right thing. So which one of these would be qualitative? You ready? 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Religious preference is gonna be qualitative. All right, let's look at this. We're interested in finding out something about the dollar value of the typical car owned by the students of our college. Now, let's see if you could tell me, what are the individuals in this scenario? Say again. Okay, we want to find out something about the dollar value of the typical car owned by the students of our college. So how many of you say that the individuals, what we're trying to find out information about is students? How many of you, what else could it be? Could be the car, because is there something specific about the cars we're trying to get information on? I think so. So if we said the individuals involved would be the cars, what would be the variables? The what? What do we want to know about the cars? The dollar value. There you go. Okay. Now, let's talk about another way to organize data, or another way to classify data. Population data. It means it's collected from every individual of interest. So I mentioned earlier about a former colleague of mine used to work for the Census Department. Okay, what is the census in the United States?
Counts population.
Do you know how often they take a census? It's every 10 years. Every 10 years, they try to get an accurate count of the population, which means they have to get information from every individual in the United States. Now, I'm just asking, do you think that's an easy task? Do you think it's likely that they're successful? They make a lot of effort to try to contact everyone, but that's almost an impossible task. They have to make some assumptions about others, and that's because it's such a huge group, right? So let's narrow it down a little bit. What if we wanted information about the students at Trinity Valley Community College? Does that sound more doable? Because we should have a database that would have every student enrolled in the college listed, right? And we could then, whatever it is we wanted to know, we could reach out to each one of those people. We don't have any unknown people in our population, but it might mean we've got about 7,000 people we need to go get information from. Now, I don't all by myself want to have to go talk to 7,000 people, but it's possible to contact all 7,000 people. So depending on what you're working with, do you see where sometimes a population would be a doable thing to approach versus sometimes it's not very doable, as in the case of trying to get information on everybody in the United States. So when that's the case, it's easier to work with a sample. All right, and that's really what happens with this polling data. That's why it sometimes changes a lot, because it all depends on the sample that you get. And so that means you just get some of the individuals of interest involved, and based on their responses, you make some projections for the population as a whole. Okay, we're going to talk about, there are some things that we've got to be careful about if we work with samples. Do you think you could maybe get a bad sample and not get good data? Absolutely. There are plenty of times that projections have been made on something and it turns out they're completely wrong because they were basing it on some bad samples. So let's look at this. In a recent survey, 1,500 adults in the US were asked if they thought there was solid evidence for global warming. 855 of the adults said yes. Now, can you tell me what would be the population and what would be the sample? What do you think would be the population? Okay, you said the adults. Be a little more specific. What, the adults in the whole world? What adults?
The 1,500 is there.
So you think it's the 1,500 that's the population?
The population of the United States.
The population would be the people in the United States, because the sample is what? The 1,500. So they went to 1,500 people in the United States as a sample to try to get an idea of what everybody in the United States might think, okay? So that's how we would describe the data set. Make sense? It takes a little bit of practice to think this way. Now, all the adults in the US would be the population. The sample would be the 1,500 in the survey. And that means the sample is called a subset of the population. When you take just a small amount out of the entire population, that's a subset, and that's what we use as a sample. Okay, and then the data itself is the how many said yes and the how many said no. So 855 said yes and 645 said no. All right, to the question. So this would be a little graphic to show you if you were inside the tan box, that would be if you asked everybody in the United States, which is not very feasible to do. So instead, the little blue odd looking shape would represent the ones that were asked in the survey. Okay, as a subset or a sample. Now, let's see if we can decide whether we have a population parameter or a sample statistic. Now, that's another vocabulary distinction I want to make here. So you may want to add this to your notes at the side. When we talk about that individual thing being measured, the variable that's being measured, if it's from a population, we use the word parameter. Notice the P's match up. Population parameter. A piece of data from a population is a parameter. But if it's a piece of data coming from a sample, we call it a statistic. So the S's pair up and the P's pair up. So you want to keep that straight. So here's what we're going to try to decide. When we read this, the number that's involved, you tell me if it came from a population. If it did, it's a parameter. If it came from a sample, it's a statistic. A recent survey of a sample of college career centers reported that the average starting salary for petroleum engineering majors is $83,121. What do you think that is? Say it again? I'm hearing statistic. Why would you say that? Because it says right here, it came from a sample. Very good. That's what I needed you to focus in on. Look at number 2. It says the 2,182 students who accepted admission offers to Northwestern University in 2009 have an average SAT score of 1442. Now, there's a lot of numbers in there. So let's talk about this for a second. It says the 2,182 students who accepted admission offers in 2009 have this SAT score. Do you think that SAT score has come from a population or from a sample? And it's a population. Why? Because it was everybody who accepted admission offers. Okay, so it didn't leave anybody out. That was everybody in the admission process. Very good. So that means if it came from a population, it's called a what? Parameter. Excellent. Okay, so this is kind of a fuzzy looking graphic, but basically this is where you see parameter goes with population, statistic goes with sample. And that is everything for the most part that's going to be in section 1 of chapter 1. And I really condensed down section 2. We used to cover intervals of measurement, but decided that that really wasn't anything we used anywhere else in the course. So I cut it out. And that means we have 2 slides for section 2, data classification. And the idea here is to just basically recognize if the data we have would be qualitative or quantitative. So we covered that in chapter 1. We're just going to practice it for in section 1. We're going to practice it here in section 2. So if you get this graphic, this is the model of the vehicle. This is the suggested retail price over here. One of these columns is qualitative. One of them is quantitative. Which one do you think is qualitative? The model. Why is that? What makes it qualitative? It's kind of organizing the car by type. So you've got the individual type of car, a sedan, the Focus, the Fusion, the Mustang, the Edge. So there's no numbers involved there. Remember, if there's no numbers involved, it can't be quantitative. Does that mean that the suggested retail price then is quantitative? Because if I look at this number and I say, the Escape Hybrid is $32,260. I think that number has meaning for me. I can look at my bank account and see if that's a doable thing for me or not, right? So qualitative is over in the left column, quantitative was in the right. And this just confirms what you guys told me. And at this point, we're going to take a break because I think that's enough that we need to do out of chapter 1 and do the vocabulary right now. What your goal is going to be, I'm going to kind of help each one of you with whatever you need. If you don't have a computer with you, go to one of these computers over here. If you've got your laptop with you, go ahead and get it up. And I want you to make sure, first of all, you got to do the student success agreement. Second thing is you need to go to the TVCC inclusive access and get your my math lab account or my stat lab account set up. Now, before you do that, listen carefully, because if you've never had an account before, it's going to make you set up an account with Pearson. There are 3 primary things you need to make sure you do very carefully. Number 1, you got to put in an email address. And it's important that you put in an email address you will check. Everybody has a TVCC email address. I would love for you to use it, but if you know that's not anything you check, don't put it in here. The reason you want it to be something you check is because if you're working on homework and you have a problem, there's going to be a button you can click that says Ask My Instructor. It will automatically link your problem to that email if you click on it. And then you don't have to describe the problem to me. You just have to say, I don't even understand how to start. Or you can say, why is this counting it wrong? And my answer seems right. Whatever it is you need to ask about, when you click that, it will generate an email and send it to me. But when I reply, the reply is going to go to whatever email you typed in. So make sure it's one that you check. If you've had an account before, but your email has changed, you can go in and edit that once you're in my math lab. The other thing you need to be real careful about when you set it up is you have to put in a username and a password. They give you some suggestions. I'm going to tell you, make sure you write it down somewhere because you may forget. And I know especially now, how many of you are like me? You just click save for your computer. So the next time you go there, it autofills. Have you ever done that? And then one day you go in and it doesn't autofill. Something has happened, an update, wiped it out, whatever. And then you've got a problem. So write it down somewhere just in case. And that way you will be in good shape if anything. I had a student one semester who didn't write down his username or password. And when he put in his email account, he mistyped it. And so when they would try to send him the recovery information, he couldn't get it because it wasn't his email. And so that was a huge problem. Don't let that happen to you. So we're going to do that. We're going to get the student success agreement. We're going to set up the My Stat Lab. And then I would like for you to get into the homework and get a feel for how it's set up. See if you need any help. Once you feel like you've got your bearings, you can kind of check out with me and say, I think I'm good. Is it okay if I go? And I'll give you permission to leave. So the 1-1-1-2 homework. And then there's a thing on reading graphs. If you go let me go ahead and click out of here. And just show you real quickly. If we were to look. Back under modules. And you see, oops. Review reading graphs, intros and videos. Instead of using class time to go through this, there's a little bit that you can review. It links to the textbook just to kind of give you a reminder of some of this. You may look at it and you may say, oh gosh, I don't have any trouble doing that. There's a couple of videos here that just cover analyzing pie charts and analyzing stacked bar charts. They're very short videos. And then after that, when you click on next, it'll get you to the homework assignment. The other thing I didn't mention in the beginning, but I will now, just to kind of keep you organized, is if you are looking on your home page, except this. Over here, you're going to have like a to-do list, and it will show due dates on assignments that are coming up. It only operates about a few days in advance, so nothing is showing up on mine yet. But you can also go to your calendar. There's a calendar button over here as well, and it will give you an at a glance for actually all of your Canvas courses, where you can color code, and any assignments would show up in here. Well, because I clicked over there, it's not showing that. But if I went to the next month, then you'll see these things pop up. Okay. All right, questions on what to do? Right, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to start working. I'll come by and answer questions. And like I said, when you get to the point, you've got those success agreement, you've got your My Math Lab set up, and you feel like you know what you're doing, you can check out with me and leave. Okay.